Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. We have Vav Vav. A man may not refrain from the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiplying unless he has children. But Shammai say that the second one may remain with her for 10 years. If she miscarried, he counts from the time of her miscarriage. Let's skip the page, sorry. Two males, but Mace Pillow says a male and a female, as it is stated, he created them male and female. One who married a woman and remained with her 10 years but did not bear children is not permitted to refrain from the fulfilling the mitzvah. If he divorced her, he may marry another. And the second one may remain with her for 10 years. If she miscarried, he counts from the time of her miscarriage. A man is commanded to be fruitful and multiply, but not the woman. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says concerning both of them, it is stated, and God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. If a widow who was married to a Kohen Gadol or a divorcee or Kalutza who was married to an ordinary Kohen brought Meleg slaves or fixed value slaves into marriage for him, the Meleg slaves may not eat Truma, but the fixed value slaves may eat Truma. They are the Meleg slaves. If they died, the loss is hers, and if they appreciated, the profit is hers. Even though he is obligated to feed them, they may not eat Truma. And these are the fixed value slaves. If they died, the loss is his, and if they appreciated, the profit is his. Since he is liable for their loss, they may eat truma. The daughter of Yisrael married a Kohen and brought into the marriage slaves for him. Whether they are melech slaves or fixed value slaves, they may eat truma. However, if the daughter of a Kohen married a Yisrael and brought into the marriage either melech slaves or fixed value slaves, they may not eat truma. Okay.
All right. Bas Yisrael shenisas lekohen. Again, the daughter of a Yisrael married to a Kohen, and v'meis v'hinicha me'uberes. So he died, leaving her pregnant. Now there are other unwritten over here is that there are other sons to this Kohen, and now uh, the uh, so now the woman is pregnant potentially with a boy who's going to inherit with his brothers from other wives. But now this Bas Yisrael has got slaves who are going to become her property again now because she's been widowed. So those slaves are going to become her property again. Now the question is she going to be allowed to um, is she going to be allowed um, to feed the slaves truma? Okay, and the answer is lo yochlu avadei habit truma. Her slaves may not eat truma. Why? Mipnei chelko shel ubar, because they are partially owned not only by the other heirs of the. Oh, so because if I think these are ton barzel slaves, which remain in his property. I think we're talking about ton barzel. Yes, Ton Barzell. That's right. Okay, I'm glad I got that one right. Um, so the Ton Barzell slaves are partially owned by his remaining sons, as well as her own son, who is not yet a fully fledged Kohen, because inside the mother's body, the child is not yet considered a Kohen. He's only considered a Kohen once he's born.
Yeah.
Um, okay, lo yochlu avadei habitruma. So therefore, because they are potentially partially owned by this fetus, they're not allowed to eat truma until he's born. Ubar posel ve'eno machil, divrei Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi says that having a fetus can only disqualify you from eating truma and does not entitle you. Um, and I can't remember if this was explicit or not. Anyway, yeah. He says it explicit here. Amrulo. So the Chachamim said to him, "Me'acha she'arta lanu al bas Yisrael lekohen." Now that you have told us that the daughter of a Yisrael who's been married to a Kohen is not allowed to eat truma because of her child, um, who might not be born, or who at least who is not yet a fully fledged Kohen, and if the child dies, then she goes back to her status as a Bas Yisrael. Okay. Af bas kohen lekohen b'meis v'nicham oberes. Let's say that this is an entirely inside the Kohen family marriage, she's a Bas Kohen married to a Kohen and she's pregnant and he died. So then you, Rabbi Yossi, should also say that since he's not a fully fledged Kohen until he's born, then you should say Lo yochlu avdei truma. Then her slaves shouldn't eat truma mipnei chelko shel ubar. But the truth is that Rabbi Yossi holds that in this particular case, since you have both mother and father coming from Kohen line, then the child is considered a fully fledged Kohen. It's that while the child is in his mother's womb, he has the status of the mother, but once he's born, he has the status of the father. So since they're both Kohanim, then the child is a Kohen one way or another, and therefore her slaves would be entitled to continue eating truma. We'll see some more stuff now in the coming Mishnayos about the status of a woman and her and who is pregnant and the different permutations of Kohen and not Kohen, etc. So we're going to have a little laundry list over here. So I just want to quickly say what's the list going to say? Poslin v'lo machil. And the following list of people disqualify a woman from eating truma and do not entitle her to eat truma in the other direction. And we'll see some practical examples of that. Ha'ubar, a fetus. Hayavam, the being a brother who's waiting to do yibum for her. Erisin, that is the first stage of marriage, putting the ring on the finger before the actual marriage. Cherish, and marriage to a deaf mute. And uben tesha shanim v'yom echad, and a boy who is 9 years old, whose bia is considered a bia, but it does not have the das to make a proper marriage. So all of these cases, they're posel, but they do not entitle her to eat. Um, I think we have the cases are not explicit in the Mishnah, so let's quickly just talk them through. That if a Bas Kohen is married to a Yisrael and he dies leaving her pregnant, she's not allowed to eat truma, even though she's been widowed and she's a Bas Kohen. She because if her the fetus prevents her from returning to eating truma, because if she has a live child, then she remains in the status of Israel. In the other direction, if a Bas Yisrael is married to a Kohen and he dies leaving her pregnant, um, she cannot continue to eat truma because her child is not a fully fledged Kohen. If she gives birth to a live child, then she can resume eating truma, because now she retains her status of Kohana because of her child. But while she is pregnant, she's not allowed to eat the truma. So in both cases, the pregnancy invalidates her from eating truma. The yavam, and again in both directions, whether if she's a Bas Yisrael who was married to a Kohen who died, and there's a Yavam Kohen who's waiting to marry her, she's not allowed to eat truma until he actually marries her. Okay. In the other direction, if she's a Bas Kohen who was married to Yisrael and he dies, and now she's waiting for Yibum from his brother the Israel. She's still not allowed to eat truma, even though she's no longer married, because she has the requirement for Yibum. Once he does chalitza to her, she can go back to her father's house and eat truma again. Okay. So in both directions, Yavam disqualifies her. Erisin, Bas Yisrael, who is married to the Kohen puts the ring on her finger. Now she goes back to her father's house and she's waiting for marriage. She is not allowed to eat truma. Now, actually, Min HaTorah, she is allowed to eat truma, but Chazal made a decree on her that she's not allowed to eat truma because she's bringing truma into her father's house, and the rest of her family are all Israelim, and it's a mikshol that they're going to come to eat truma because she's sitting in their house. So technically she could eat truma, but we don't allow her to. The other direction, definitely she can't. If she's a bas kohen and married to Yisrael, so even though she's in her father's house and they're all eating truma over there, she's not allowed to eat the truma because she's now married to Yisrael. Okay, and a cherish is a marriage to a deaf mute. Min Torah, a deaf mute is unable to effect the marriage because he lacks the das, but Chazal permitted him to marry by signaling, So because it's a marriage to Rabbanan, they cannot overrule the Doraisa. That so if he's a Kohen, his wife is not allowed to eat truma. And if he's a Yisrael and his wife is a Bas Kohen, then she's still not allowed to eat truma because because it looks like she's married to a Yisrael. So in both directions, it puzzles her from truma. Safek shehu ben teisha shanim v'yom echad. What if there's a doubt about the boy who's if he's 9 years old or not? Um, so the boy who's 9 years old, he can remove from her. So let's say he is um, if he's somebody who she's not allowed to be married to, and they have an illicit relationship, the bia of a boy of 9 years old is enough to puzzle the girl from the corner. So she's a bas kohen, and there's a mamzer who's 9 years old, and he has relations with her. That invalidates her from truma. If he was younger than 9 years old, for sure, it wouldn't invalidate her because the bia of anything less than 9 years old is not considered a bia. Okay. Um, so even if there's a doubt if he's 9 years old or not, suffix she'eno, suffix or suffix heavy stays saros, suffix lo heavy, or if there's a doubt about whether he's reached 13 years old, if he's bar mitzvah or not, if there's a doubt about that, and is he able to contract a marriage or not properly, in both cases he puzzles her from truma. We cannot rely on him being a valid husband until we know for sure, because truma is an issur d'oraisa for
Right.
a Bas Yisrael to eat. Nafal habayis alav al bas achiv. Okay, what's the situation? Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and Shimon is married to Reuven's daughter, all legitimate, and he's also married to another woman who's unrelated. So now, he and his wife died. The house collapsed on them, and they both came out dead. But we don't know who died first, and this makes a big difference because if if Shimon died first, then he left two widows, right? One of whom is Reuben's daughter, and one of whom, oh, did I just make balloons go up? What kind of gesture is that did that? There. Okay. If you if you left two wives, one of whom is Reuben's daughter and one of whom is a co-wife, then the co-wife goes out without chalitza, because celebrate. And the co-wife goes out without chalitza because it's because the daughter is an erva to Reuven, and therefore
Right.
the co-wife goes out without chalitza. However, if the daughter died first,
Hmm.
right, and then when Shimon died, he had only one wife who is not an erva at all to Reuven, and therefore she requires yibum or chalitza. So because we have a
Right.
safek, whenever we have a safek, we have to give her a chalitza because we can't let her marry again because maybe she needs a yibum, and you can't marry her because maybe she's an erva to him. So
It says it says here if it's not known who died first, the co-wife requires Kalitza, but not be taken in Yibum. Right?
exactly. So that's what I just explained is that the co to discharge her from the doubt, we have to give her a chalitza.
Right.
Okay. Mishnah Hey, Ham Onis V'Hamafate V'Hashote. So these are so if a relationship happens but outside of the framework of a marriage. So whether it's a rape or a seduction, or if it involves a a man who is a shote who has no das and therefore cannot consummate a marriage. Lo poslim velo machilim. They do not affect her truma status. Okay. But if they are disqualified from coming into the central marriage community, in other words, if they're mamzerim, for example, hare elu poslim, then they do disqualify her. How so? Yeah, Yisrael sheba al bas kohen. So if a Yisrael had an illicit relationship with a bas kohen, tochal b'truma does not affect her truma status. She can continue eating truma. He didn't marry her, therefore it was the wrong thing to do, but she can continue eating truma. However, Ibra, if she became pregnant from this, Lo tuchal b'truma. We know that the fetus disqualifies her from having truma. Nechtach uba b'me'eha. In other words, she miscarried. Tochal, then she can go back to eating her truma. Okay, but if she had, what's not said out here is that if she does have the child, then that permanently disqualifies her from truma unless the child dies. Um, so she remains. So the act of relations does not disqualify her from truma though, only if she becomes pregnant. Kohen Shebal Bas Yisrael. What happens in the other direction? If a Kohen had relations outside of marriage with a Bas Yisrael, lo tuchal truma. That does not entitle her to truma. Ibra, if she became pregnant, lo tuchal. Once she becomes pregnant, she cannot eat. She still cannot eat truma. But Yalda, if she had a child out of wedlock with a Kohen, her child is a Kohen,
Mhm.
and she is permitted to eat truma now, even though she never married the Kohen. She's entitled because of her son. Nimtza kocho shel ben gadol mishalav. That shows that her son's power to enable her to eat truma is stronger than the father, because the father, he didn't entitle her to eat, but her son does. Okay. Ha'eved posel mishum bia. A slave disqualifies her for truma by having relations with her because the slave is not somebody that she's allowed to be married to, much like a mamzer. The eno posel mishum zera, but he does not disqualify because of his offspring. Um, okay, which means actually we'll see that in a second. Ketzad. Bas Yisrael lekohen. So you have a Bas Yisrael who has relations with a Kohen, or a Bas Kohen who has relations with a Yisrael. V'yalda hamenu ben, and she gives birth to a son. Okay. V'halacha ben v'nichbash ala shivcha, and this child, the son, went and had relations with a shivcha knanis. V'yalda hamenu ben, and she gave birth now to a son. So now we've got a grandson. Hooray, they Eved, but the grandson is an Eved because he's born to a Shivcha.
Mhm.
Haisa Aim Aviv Bas Yisrael Kohen. So if the original woman from this where the story began is a Bas Yisrael who was married to a Kohen, okay, now uh, she and she so the son was a Kohen, and the son had relationships with a shifcha and therefore had a grandson. And now both her husband and her son have died, and all that's left is this grandson who's the Eved. Lo techal b'truma. This does not entitle her to continue eating truma because now she has no relatives, she has no descendants or husbands or anything like that who are kohanim, and therefore she reverts back to her Bas Yisrael status. In the other direction, Bas Kohen Israel, if she started out life as a Bas Kohen and she married a Israel, and she had a son, and the son had a child from a shifcha, and now her son and her husband have died, then her grandson, who is an Eved, is not technically her relative. So therefore, she reverts back to her Kohen status. So she can go back to eating truma. Mamzer poselu ma'achil. So the mamzer can both disqualify and qualify her for eating truma. Keitzad, how so? Bas Yisrael Kohen, Bas Kohen Israel, whichever direction it goes, and v'yaldahem enu bas, and they have a daughter from their marriage. V'halcha bas v'nises le'eved, and this mamzer that we're talking about is mamzer according to I think Rabbi Akiva. So that's not technically this is not technically a mamzer according to our halacha. Or a goy v'yalda hemenu ben. So basically a non-Jewish father. Hareze mamzer. So this hareze mamzer is not la halacha. This is according to the I think it's Rabbi Akiva, that the child of a non-Jewish father is a mamzer, which is not the halacha. Um, but Haisa aim imo bas Yisrael the Kohen. So now, if everyone dies except for the this grandson, that still is considered a legitimate child. And even if the child is actually a mamzer, it this will it's nonetheless a mamzer is considered offspring in order to maintain her status as a, if she's a Yisrael, a Bas Yisrael who married a Kohen, she maintains a Kohen status. And in the converse case, if it's a Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, then a Bas Kohen to a Yisrael, then she maintains her Yisrael status because he is a legitimate. I mean, he is a relative, even if he's not, even if he's a mamzer. Okay, tochal b'truma bas kohen Israel lo tochal b'truma. So that ends a rather long Mishnah. Okay, we're not going to have time to do all of our chazaras. Let's just do the one from Yevamos, and we'll have to do the rest on our own.
The one from Yevamos, okay.
Yeah, so Dalad Dalad.
Oh, done. If he married her, she is considered his wife in every respect, um, except that her ketubah obligation rests upon the state of a first husband. The commandment is for the eldest to perform yibum, but if he was unwilling to do so, we may approach all the other brothers. If they were unwilling, we return to the elders and say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either kalitza or yibum. If he deferred to a minor until he becomes of age, or to the elders until he arrives from overseas, or to a deaf mute, or to an idiot, we do not listen to him, but we say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either kalitza or yibum.
Okay, I'm going to have to drop there and
Right.
go my ride into work. So we'll
Okay.
do the rest of the chazaras ourselves.
What was today's? I was supposed to be